Bart and I got engaged, I was already over 35 years old, and we wanted 2 kids. So we started trying right away, which was a lot of fun for a while. About 8 months later, I had my annual exam at my OBGYN, and the gynecologist asked, is there anything you want to discuss? So I said, well, my husband and I have been trying to get pregnant. It's only been about 8 months, and I know you're not supposed to worry until it's been like a year. And she said, oh no, when you're as old as you are. So she told me we should go get our fertility tested. Now, I had always dreamed, or maybe assumed is a better word, assumed that I would get pregnant the natural way, as a result of an interaction with my husband. So I had a little bit of reservation about the unnaturalness of making a baby in a lab. But if my husband, Bart, and I wanted our own children, it turned out that, in fact, we weren't going to be able to do that without medical assistance. We went to Shady Grove Fertility to find out what modern medicine could do for us. Turns out, Shady Grove did not let me down on my expectations that going to a lab to make a baby would be a clinical experience. From the very first, it didn't feel very organic. The first thing they did is they checked our fertility to make sure that we would in fact be able to even produce offspring if they helped us. Then they checked our finances to make sure we could pay them. Then they checked our genes to make sure we were genetically compatible and capable of creating perfect babies. Once all of those formalities were cleared, we were assigned a doctor, and we met with Dr. Brown. Now, even though we were making a baby in a laboratory, it was still going to be our baby. It was still my body that was going to be carrying it. And so I wanted Dr. Brown to understand some of my reservations and some of my feelings about the whole process. So when we sat down with her, I said, I'd like this to be as natural a process as possible. I don't want to use too many drugs if we can help it. I'm one of those people who eats organic, or I guess more to the point, non-genetically modified food. Yeah, Dr. Brown did not find me amusing. But she did suggest that we should start with IUI, intrauterine insemination, as the slightly more natural way of making a baby that doesn't involve a man and a woman having sex. So IUI is where they take the man's sperm and they put it in a turkey baster. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And then they insert it into the woman's vagina, just like having sex. Exactly like having sex. We did go ahead and try IUI 1 time, 2 times. Oh, that's my water. You can have it. We tried IUI 1 time and it failed, 2 times and it failed. 3rd time, when it failed, Shady Grove decided that we should have another appointment with Dr. Brown to discuss the next logical step, which was IVF. Yes. In vitro fertilization. They scheduled us for an appointment in about a week or 2, and we hadn't actually talked to Dr. Brown since that first consultation. So I was a little bit surprised when Dr. Brown called me on the phone. I was even more surprised by what she said. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you are a carrier for the Fragile X gene, and you're not going to be allowed to proceed with the IVF until you meet with our genetic counselor. I'm sorry, I thought we got tested months ago. You're going to have to speak to the genetic counselor. I'm sorry, call the office and make an appointment. And then she hung up, not waiting for me to ask any questions, or I suspect waiting for the understanding of what she was saying to sink in, because really, if we couldn't proceed with IVF, we couldn't proceed with making a baby. Bart and I had a nervous night wondering about our future prospect of baby making while we waited for the next day to speak with the genetic counselor. When she called, she said, I don't understand why you called me. Well, Dr. Brown said that we're carriers for the Fragile X gene. No, I know, I got your message, but did you guys get tested again? Oh, not that I know of, I don't think so. Yeah, according to our records, neither you or your husband are carriers. I don't know where Dr. Brown is getting this, but you're gonna have to call Shady Grove and talk to them. So I called Shady Grove and I asked for Dr. Brown, and they left a message, and then a nurse called me back. She said, I think what happened is that Dr. Brown had the wrong file in front of her. Okay. Can we be sure about that? Can you have Dr. Brown call me to confirm? Oh yeah, I mean, everything's gonna be fine, but I'll tell the doctor to call you. As you can imagine, the doctor never called. So I canceled our appointment and made a new appointment with Dominion Fertility. Dr. Peason was a gentle giant of a man, and by that I mean very tall, not very wide, and I adored him from the moment I met him. I still do, in fact, despite everything he did to me. He knew that we had already tried IUI 3 times, so Dr. Peason recommended that we start right off the bat with IVF, in vitro fertilization. And despite my reservations, I didn't want to waste any more time trying anything organic. I was all in. So we agreed to go ahead with IVF. And there is nothing natural about it. Now, for those of you playing at home, IVF is where they take the woman's eggs and they take the man's sperm and they put them in a petri dish and stir them together and then put them in your body and hope you get a baby. Now, normally a woman produces, and I'm not a doctor, but she produces about 1 egg a month. But when they're going through all this trouble, they want to get more than that. So they pump you full of drugs. So for 3 weeks or so, I injected myself 2 times a day with stimulating hormones in my belly. Yes, it hurt. But the hormones drove me crazy. Like me on my worst teenage period ever crazy. I would cry at the drop of a hat or over spilt milk. I yelled at Art when he didn't even deserve it. I was hot and anxious and depressed and cranky. And then to make it even better, I had to go into the office for monitoring constantly. So in addition to everything else, I had to go to the office to get blood work done almost every other day. So my arm started to look like a heroin addict's, although my body never got that skinny for some reason. And then there was the other kind of monitoring, the wand. Yeah, which I'm not going to make you hear a description of, other than to let you know, because it does play an important part in the story, that the wand is an ultrasound device, a very intimate ultrasound device. After about 3.5 weeks, the wand and the blood work showed that the time was ripe, and so was I. It was egg retrieval day. The morning of the procedure, when I showed up to the doctor's office, I was a little bit nervous about getting my eggs cut out of me, but the nurse gave me a mild sedative, which kicked in like 2 seconds later. As she was walking me over to the hospital bed, she turned back and she said, "Oh, someone's got their happy face on." It wasn't that clever, but I thought it was the funniest thing anybody had ever said to me. I could not stop laughing. She laid me down on the operating table, and then she strapped my legs into the stirrups, and she strapped my ankles and my thighs into the stirrups, and then propped me up at a 90-degree angle, and then my knees bent down at a 90-degree angle, and as soon as I was all prepped and strapped in, she said, "Okay, the doctor will be in a minute," and just at that moment, the fire alarm went off. The nurse, like a dog hearing a whistle, kind of perked up and looked around, and then she turned back to me and said, "I'll be right back." And then she left, leaving the door open. I was naked, but for a hospital gown, my legs were strapped into the stirrups and spread very wide for all the world to see. I kept picturing the firemen coming in and grinding me like that, which of course I found hysterical. The nurse returned, followed by the doctor, and he closed the door behind him, and no more smoke came in, and they found me lying there just giggling to myself. The nurse told me that an AC unit had caught fire and it was nothing to worry about. Unsedated, I might have thought that an electrical fire is something to worry about, but in my current state of bliss, I was feeling no pain. I was like, okay, do your worst. And then Dr. Payson did, and it really hurt. But I survived the procedure and the electrical fire. And the good news is, from that procedure, they were able to produce 9 viable embryos, which is fantastic. I was told to come back to the office 5 days later with a full bladder. Have you ever had to pee so badly you thought it would come out your eyeballs? Yeah, I have. It felt like they had plugged a garden hose into my belly button and just turned the tap on. And that's how I felt when I arrived at the appointment. 45 minutes later, when they took me back, I thought I was going to explode. And then they slathered my belly with cold gel, and the nurse pushed down on my bladder. And I don't mean that figuratively. The whole point was to depress my bladder while Dr. Payson inserted a speculum and then put in 2 embryos. And I somehow got through the procedure without peeing on anyone. And then, when everything was out of me and off of me, the nurse said, okay, dear, now just lie there for 10 minutes and then you can go pee. That was the longest wait of my life. I thought I was going to die. That wait was longer than the 2 weeks we had to wait to find out if the procedure had worked. But 2 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant with our first child. Yay! It's funny, I think because of the challenges we had, I thought getting pregnant would be the hard part. Having a baby is easy, right? I mean, everybody does it. 81% of women will have a baby at some point in their lives. That is a lot of people having babies. By contrast, I have run marathons. Only 0.5% of the population has done that because it's hard. Hence, the way I saw it, having a baby must be easy. Of course, once I did get pregnant, I realized very quickly it is not easy, nor is it fun, and I'm pretty sure all 81% of the women will agree with me on that one. But I had a uniquely challenging pregnancy, with the stats to prove it. Because 80% of miscarriages happen in the first 12 weeks, Bart and I decided not to share the news with anyone until we were past that benchmark, which was hard for me because I got very pregnant very fast. I was dizzy and faint and nauseous, and I wanted to share with my friends that there was actually a really good reason for my rapid weight gain. But we made it through the 12 weeks, and Bart and I went to our OBGYN's appointment, and we had an ultrasound, and it was amazing seeing the little bean moving around on the monitor. In fact, Bart and the doctor and I all thought we saw a penis. I asked the doctor, do you think we're having a boy? He said, well, I think there's a pretty good chance of that. I said, well, like how much of a chance? And he said, I can guarantee you 50%. Yeah, they're so funny, those doctors. Boy or girl, we were just thrilled. We could finally share the news with friends and family. We were having a baby, and nothing could take that away from us now. Now, they do what's called a level 2 ultrasound at 20 weeks, and a lot of people get nervous about the level 2 ultrasound because that's the big test. It's where they make sure that the baby is the right size and shape and all of its organs are in the right place. I wasn't nervous about the level 2. My little boy was constantly kicking me and punching me. There was no way there was a problem. On the day of the ultrasound, Bart left work early. He picked me up, and we went to Fairfax Radiology for our 3 p.m. appointment. When we got there, the technician started the ultrasound, and she had to chase that thing all over my belly. She actually got frustrated. "Your baby moves too much." I just laughed because Bart had heard me complain about that about a billion times already. After an hour or so of her trying to get all the photos she needed, she finally had a break and said, "Do you know the baby's sex?" "Well, we think it's a boy. Do you want me to tell you?" "Yes, you're having a girl." There was magic in that moment. I mean, not that it would have mattered more one way or the other, but the fact that it was a girl. It was a she now. She was a little girl. We were just excited to know that our little baby was a baby and not an embryo. The technician eventually finished up and left the room, and she went to get the radiologist. Bart and I held hands, tears in our eyes, imagining the little girl we'd one day hold in our arms. The radiologist came into the room, and she started chasing our little girl around, trying to get images. She didn't seem frustrated, though. She seemed concerned. "Is everything all right? Let me finish what I'm doing, and then we can discuss it." Not a yes. When she finished up and I had gotten changed back into my street clothes and we were sitting in her office, it was after 5 p.m. The place was a ghost town. The radiologist said, "There's more calcification in your baby's heart than we like to see." "Well, what does that mean?" "Your doctor will discuss that with you." I have tried calling the office, but they're already closed. I am going to call them first thing tomorrow morning, and I suggest you do the same. "Is our baby okay?" "You're going to have to talk about that with your doctor." And then after giving us this potentially very frightening news, but no concrete information, she said just about the dumbest thing anyone has ever said to me: "Go home and relax." And as if that weren't annoying enough, she added, "And whatever you do, don't Google it." Well, I, of course, got in the car and Googled it, and I wish I hadn't. What I found were autopsy reports. Stillborn babies with calcification in their hearts. What should have been a wonderful day, finding out we were having a girl, telling everyone about it, turned into a horrible night of me imagining my baby dying and refusing to answer the phone. Bart, ever the voice of reason, said we didn't know anything and we shouldn't jump to conclusions, but all I could imagine were baby autopsy reports. The next morning, I waited impatiently for it to be 9:05 a.m., and then I called my doctor's office. I had to leave a message. 2 hours later, I had forced myself to wait long enough, and I called again and left another message. At 12:30 p.m., a million years later, the doctor called me back and apologized, saying they were short-staffed. She said, "The calcification in your baby's heart are called echogenic foci. It can be an indication of a genetic disorder or a heart defect. It is too soon to know. We're going to have to run a few tests." And then she scheduled us to meet with a pediatric cardiologist to get a fetal echocardiogram, and then we had to go to Fairfax Hospital's antenatal unit for another ultrasound. My head was spinning. A few nail-biting days later, Bart and I met with a pediatric cardiologist, Dr. S. An intense, middle-aged woman, she had the manner of someone pretending to be cheerful, which did nothing to ease my nerves. After the EKG, Dr. S discussed the results over a sketch of the heart. The foci are located along the pulmonary wall, leading us to conclude that they are simply thicker areas of the heart muscle. Does that mean that our baby's okay? It is too soon to be 100% certain, but if I were a betting woman, I would bet on this being nothing to worry about. I was so relieved. I had been trying not to live in fear over the last few days, but completely failing. Now I could breathe again, tell everyone we were having a girl. In the meantime, Dr. S did schedule us for a follow-up appointment in a month just to be safe. And then we had that ultrasound appointment at Fairfax Hospital, which we decided to keep because it was already scheduled. And I wasn't really worried about the ultrasound anymore because the heart specialist was betting on my baby girl to be fine. I was more seeing it as another opportunity to get to see the little girl moving around. Well, we got to the hospital and the technician asked why we were there, and I told her about the foci and about how Dr. S had said there was nothing to worry about. She started taking images with the ultrasound machine, and after a little while, she stopped and left the room and got a nurse. And even though they were whispering to each other in front of the monitor, I could hear everything they said. The tech said they told them there was nothing to worry about. The nurse said, I'll get the cardiologist right away. And then, as we waited for the cardiologist to arrive, the technician and the nurse complained about how Dr. S had missed something, but they wouldn't tell me what it was. I didn't care about their stupid hatred of this doctor. I just wanted to find out what was going on with my baby. Finally, the pediatric cardiologist arrived, and she had her little portable EKG machine, and she took more images, and then they sat me up, and the new doctor gave me the new news. Completely unrelated to the foci, my baby girl had a hole in her heart called a VSD. It is a small opening between the two chambers of the heart. Sometimes they close on their own. Sometimes people live with them their whole lives and it's never a problem. Sometimes they require open heart surgery. It was just something else we were going to have to wait for and monitor. Now, the doctor and the nurse and the technician all had this power play moment, and they wanted to argue about who was the smartest person over more images from my belly. But we'd been at the hospital for 4.5 hours at this point, so when I went to lay back down, I fainted.
Oh.
Yeah, if you ever want to get out of a test, I highly recommend being pregnant and fainting. Not only did it get me out of the test, but they gave me graham crackers and apple juice and sent me home. Now, this doctor had made it seem like the VSD was not a big concern, and I was determined not to worry. When you have a baby in your belly, everything transfers, even stress. So I tried to think happy thoughts and theme them in my little girl. It was in this brief period of time between doctor's appointments that a name came to me. It was so perfect. I knew it was hers. When I told Bart, he got tears in his eyes because he knew it was perfect as well. At 22 weeks, we named our baby girl Emma Grace. At 24 weeks, we went back for a follow-up appointment with Dr. S. After another EKG, we had another consultation. This time, there was no fake smile. The tumors in her heart, wait, they're tumors now? There are two types of tumor they can be. Neither is cancer. The one type of tumor, a fibroma, will continue to grow as the fetus grows. Fibromas need to be removed before they can interfere with heart function. Removed, like, after she's born? Let's not even go down that road unless we have to. The other type of tumor, a rhabdomyoma, will stop growing and eventually shrink. However, rhabdomyomas are an indication of a genetic disorder called tuberous sclerosis, or TS. It is too soon to know which type of tumor she has. After more misguided Googling, the way I saw it, we had two bad possibilities. The one type of tumor could grow until it stopped her heart. The other was an indication of a genetic disorder with symptoms like autism, seizures, and continuous tuberous growths in her kidney, heart, and brain. There was nothing we could do but wait and worry and go to more doctor's appointments. The next day, we had to meet with a genetic specialist. The geneticist was a sweet woman who was very pregnant. She asked us a whole long list of family health history questions, none of which explained the tumors or the hole in Emma's heart. She couldn't test for TS until after Emma was born, so the appointment felt like a waste of time. But before we left, there was one more bomb to be dropped. If you choose, you could still terminate the pregnancy. Are you advising us to? Are you saying that's what we should do? I'm not saying that. I'm simply letting you know it is an option, not in Virginia, but in some other states. Are you saying it's our best option? I'm simply letting you know it is only an option for a short period of time, and you need to make the decision soon. The way I saw it, we had a 50% chance of the tumors being the fibromas that would grow until they stopped her heart, because I was certain that's what would happen. If it were the other kind of tumor, her odds got crazy. 0.01% of the population have tumors in their hearts. Of those, half have rhabdomyomas. Of those, 80% get tuberous sclerosis. Of those, some live very normal lives, and a small percent die from a tumor growing in their heart or brain. In the moments after the geneticist uttered the words, "terminate the pregnancy," all the worst possible outcomes played out in my mind. I have to say, even though I hadn't met her face to face yet, I loved her. She was my little girl, my little Emma Grace. She kicked me and she punched me. She moved around inside me. I had no choice but to think about her constantly. I loved her, but I was terrified what it would do to me, falling even more in love with her over the next several months, only to have her die inside me, or worse, after she was born. I could not bear the thought of keeping this child one more day if I was going to have to feel her die. Nor could I bear the idea of making the choice to end her life. We had a short time to make the decision, and Bart and I made it in minutes. It turns out that I am a betting woman because we decided to bet on Emma to survive. At 30 weeks, we went back to Dr. S for another consultation. She said, somewhat cheerfully, "The tumors don't appear to have grown." Okay, that sounds good, but I needed clarification, and really what I wanted was guidance. I thought maybe if Dr. S understood where Bart and I were coming from, maybe she would get better at giving us this kind of news. I said, we haven't been preparing to have this baby because we haven't known if we are having this baby. Do these results mean that we can go ahead and start planning? Dr. S thought for a long time before answering. It would be better if you wait until after our next appointment. So no, her answer was no. We shouldn't believe we were having this baby. Emma Grace was due in 10 weeks, and we still hadn't prepared for our little girl. Not that it wasn't hard for Bart, because it was, but for me, there was no escape. As we both grew bigger, my fear grew as well, but there was no place I could hide. When you are obviously pregnant, everyone is happy for you. Complete strangers would smile when they saw me and say, "Oh, when are you due?" or "How far along are you?" or "The one that hurt the most, boy or girl?" I would force myself to smile and say, "We're having a girl," and try to believe it. Somehow the next month passed. I had bad days where I thought terrible thoughts, and I had good days where I managed not to think at all. And then it was June, and another appointment with the cardiologist. The results of the EKG 6 weeks before Emma was due showed that the tumors had not grown and might have shrunk. Does that mean that they are the rhabdomyomas? We can't be 100% certain, but it does seem more likely. And with minimal fanfare, Dr. S announced, "You are having this baby." You might think that I threw a party that night. But the last truly wonderful, carefree moment of my entire pregnancy was when we had gotten the news that we were having a girl. Right before the news that came right after and just kept coming. When Dr. S said, "You are having this baby," the only thing I could think was, okay, when's the next test? We had one final fetal EKG 1 week before Emma was due. When we got to the office, Dr. S was gone. She'd left the practice. The male cardiologist who met with us was just the right balance of serious and laid back that you look for in a doctor. He said, "The fact that the tumors have shrunk lead us to conclude that they are the rhabdomyomas. It's my estimation that they're going to continue to shrink until they're not a problem. The VSD," you guys remember the hole in her heart? "The VSD has all but disappeared. We are going to have to check her heart after she's born, but as far as cardiology is concerned, everything looks good." What about the tuberous sclerosis? "Well, you're going to have to go see a geneticist after she's born, but I can tell you that the majority of cases we see with these types of tumors test negative for TS." I don't know if it was the news he gave us or the way he gave us the news, but when I left the office that day, I finally felt like I was having a baby. And on the morning of July 26th, I was handed a beautiful, kicking and screaming Emma Grace. If I had been in love with her before she was born, I was so much more in love when I met her face to face. As I held Emma in my arms, I knew, no matter what any tests said, that she was perfect. We had a follow-up appointment with the cardiologist a week after Emma was born. The tumors had shrunk to the point they don't need to be monitored anymore. The hole was completely closed. The cardiologist pronounced Emma's heart normal. So far, there have been no signs of TS developing. It's a very weird disease to rule out, so there is more waiting and wondering before we can be certain. But I haven't bothered to Google or crunch the numbers. The way I see it, the only thing I can be 100% certain of is that I am blessed to have my little girl. Emma Grace is the most wonderful little girl, if that's correct grammar. She's just the sweetest thing, and we love her so much. I mean, Bart and I could not love her more. But we could have another baby to love. Or at least, that was our hope. When Emma turned 1 year old, a little after, Bart and I decided it was time to start trying for baby number 2. This time we didn't even bother having sex. I mean, we had a 1-year-old. Who has time for that? We just went back to the lab and we're like, make us a baby. And the IVF had worked with Emma on the first round, so we had 7 frozen embryos left. And And maybe because the IVF had worked the first time with Emma, we got a little cocky. So when Dr. Payson asked if we wanted to risk twins by putting 2 in or just hope that one would work, we were like, oh, let's just put 1 in. And we were both surprised and disappointed when a little while later we found out that the first round had failed. For the second round, we were like, yeah, let's put both in, and if we get twins, more to love. But the second round failed as well. And then I started to get a little nervous because you see, each time you do a round of IVF, you have to wait for your cycle to come around again at a minimum. So at a minimum, that's a month, but sometimes it's longer for all of your blood work and hormones and everything else to align. And I wasn't getting any younger. So when Dr. Payson proposed that maybe for the third round we try this new trick that he had read about that seems to increase your chances of getting pregnant, I was all for it. It did mean waiting a little longer because what he had to do was a biopsy of my uterus. It was just to check for infection, but also, and this is, I'm pretty sure word for word, I'm quoting a doctor here, by cutting your uterus, your body goes into healing mode and your womb becomes super womb, and it's great for growing a baby. I think that's what he said. In any case, I said, sure, let's do it. And that procedure hurt like a, basically, just, inserted a scalpel and gave me a little slice on my womb. But it was worth it. Or it would have been if round 3 had worked. We were down to just 2 embryos left. And there were no new tricks out there to try. There was just more hormones and wanding, and eventually the time was right and the last 2 embryos were inside me, and all we could do was wait and hope that this last chance would work. It's not that we couldn't have tried to produce more embryos, but I was 40 now, and we had a 1.5-year-old, and I was injecting myself for months on end with hormones, and I was exhausted. Did I mention the 1.5-year-old? Yes, I was a little cranky, yes. And so it was that 2 weeks later, we were thrilled to find out that we were pregnant again. And you'd think, that's it, happy ending story's over, right? But with IVF, you find out so early on in the process about pregnancy that it leaves a lot of time for things to go wrong. So they don't stop testing you once you get a positive pregnancy result. 2 days later, I went back to the office and had blood work done, and my beta levels had doubled. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what they want, so it was good. 4 days later, however, when I went back for blood work, my beta levels weren't quite where they wanted them to be, so I had to go back a few days after that, and this time, in addition to the blood work, they brought back my old friend, Wandy. And Dr. Payson wasn't there that day, so the doctor who was there told me, the beta levels aren't looking great, and the embryo is smaller than we like to see. Why don't you come back in a week and meet with Dr. Payson? Now, my mind went there, right? I kind of got the feeling that she was maybe passing the buck on giving me some bad news, but I didn't want to jump to any conclusions, so I waited for a week to go by, and then I went in and I met with Dr. Payson. And after more blood work and after the wand, he sat me up and he said, the beta levels haven't risen enough. The sac, which is what he was now calling the embryo, the sac is smaller than normal. I'm sorry, we can't consider this a normal pregnancy. You can expect to miscarry in 1 to 2 weeks. This is definitely not happening, right? I mean, I can stop taking the hormones, I can do drugs and alcohol and all those things I'm not supposed to do with a baby in my body. I don't see how this pregnancy will continue. So yes, you can do whatever you want with your body. If you don't have a miscarriage in the next week, I want to see you back at my office in 1 week. I was crushed. Of course, we wanted this baby, and I really didn't want to go through the process of trying to make new embryos, and we didn't really have a plan for what we were going to do if we didn't do that, and I didn't want to have to figure it out. But on the upside, it was nice knowing that I didn't have to imagine the worst happening because Dr. Beeson had basically already concluded that the worst was going to happen for me. But on the other hand, there was the waiting for a miscarriage. It's a very weird thing to do. I didn't want the life inside me to end, and yet I knew it was going to. And since I knew it was going to, I kind of wanted to get it over with so I could grieve and move on. And from a logistics point of view, in a week and a half, I was flying to Montana for a business trip, and I didn't want to have a miscarriage on the plane or while I was in Montana shooting a video, but I didn't have the miscarriage in under a week, so I had to go back for another appointment with Dr. Payson. Now, before I left, Bart offered to come with me, and I'm like, why bother? It's not like he's going to tell us anything new. I would end up eating those words. After the blood work, I was laying on the table, wand in place, and Dr. Payson just sat there, staring at the ultrasound monitor for a long, silent, uncomfortable time. Finally, I was like, hey, what's going on down there? And he moved as if he was in a fog, and he kind of turned to face me, and then he slowly turned the monitor to face me, and he said, you see that? That's an embryo, and it has a heartbeat. What? I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to get your hopes up. You very well could still miscarry. However, there's a chance, there is a slim chance that this could still turn out to be a normal pregnancy. I want to see you back here in a week if you have a miscarriage. Oh my freaking God. I had been miserable at the news that I was definitely not having this baby, but now I was miserable at this not knowing. I don't like not knowing, and I don't like waiting, and it was one heck of a confusing week. I flew to Montana, I did my shoot, I didn't have a miscarriage while I was away, and I got back late Friday night. Now, fortunately, even though they don't normally take monitoring patients on a Saturday, Dr. Payson was sympathetic, and he agreed to see me Saturday morning, so I wouldn't have to wait until Monday. This time, Bart came with me, and as we were sitting on the table, or I was laying on the table, and Bart was sitting next to me holding my hand, Dr. Payson turned the audio on the ultrasound machine, and he said, you know what that is? Now, I had had enough drama over the last few weeks, and I did not need any more dramatic tension. So I was maybe a little bit snippy when I said, yeah, it's a heartbeat. What does that mean? He said, this is one of only 2 times in 15 years that I have seen this happen. It means that this is now a normal pregnancy. You can make an appointment to see your OB after this. And then I burst into tears. It was probably just the hormones, I'm sure. But the amazing thing is, it was a normal pregnancy. For me, it was oddly normal. Like, I didn't have to go to the doctor every 2 freaking days. It was really weird not having a constant picture of my baby. At the level 2 ultrasound this time, we only found out 2 things. First of all, that this one was a boy. And second of all, that he was fat. From then on out, the doctors kept referring to him euphemistically as healthy. And he did. He grew fatter, and so did I. I gained over 50 pounds, which is a lot more than I gained with Emma. And about a month before the due date, I guess the little boy got sick of there not being any more ways for my body to expand, and so he decided to make a little room for himself by dislocating 6 of my ribs. That was the worst pain I have ever been in, and I have been hit by a car. The good news is it only hurt when I breathed. And so, unlike most people who have this happen to them, I was thrilled when 2 weeks before my due date, my water broke in the middle of the night. Bart drove me to Fairfax Hospital. He dropped me off in front of the Women's Center and went to park the car, which was part of the plan. I was okay with that. But I was having contractions, and my water seemed to continuously be breaking. So I was just sort of limping awkwardly into the building. And it was Thanksgiving weekend, so the place was deserted. The only person working was the lady at reception, and I limped my way up to her, and thankfully I'd been there before, so it didn't take that long to get me registered. And then she gave me the wristband, and when I was all signed in, she's like, "Okay, elevator's over there, take it to the 3rd floor." Yeah, no wheelchair, no escort. So I just kind of like stumbled my way to the elevator, and I took it to the 3rd floor, and thank God there was a nurse waiting for me up there, because I practically fell into the woman's arms. She took me and got me on the hospital bed, and she got all the monitors hooked up and was monitoring my contractions. Now the little boy was breech, which meant I had to have a C-section, and so they got all of that set up, and a few hours later, the nurse wheeled me into the operating room, and then the anesthesiologist set me up with a spinal tap, and then I don't know if anyone else has had this, I don't know if they do this for every operation or just C-sections, but then they strapped my arms down like Christ on the cross. Anyone else have this happen? It's really weird. And then like I'm laying there and I'm all strapped in again, and then they put the shroud, we'll go with that metaphor, right?
Yes.
They put the shroud there so I can't see what else is going on down there, and then they brought my husband in, and then the clock struck 7. And as punctuality is of the utmost importance, they put my delivery on hold so that the doctors could change shifts. They couldn't wait 1 freaking minute, or as it turns out, 7. My little boy, Ethan, by the way, we named him Ethan, was born at 7:07 a.m. to a new set of doctors. If he hadn't been so cute, I might have thought that that was pretty rude. But my little underachiever, he did pretty well for himself. He was 2 weeks early and nearly 9 pounds. Yeah, he's 7 months now, and he is still fat, or I should say healthy. And Emma turns 3 years old tomorrow, for those of you keeping track of the date, and she is healthy as well. In fact, both my kids, well, neither of them have needed medical assistance, since their conception. And I hope that we never do need medical assistance, but if we do, I will be happy for modern medicine. However, if I never see another needle or wand or monitoring device of any kind, I will be a very happy woman. Although truth be told, I am already a very happy woman. It might not have been the most natural process, or Lord knows, the